Welcome everyone to the Friday Coaching Cafe. Today's topic is consistency, not perfection. And I'm Paula, and I am joined today by the lovely Bridget, who I'm always excited to have on because she asks some of the best questions I've ever heard.
Thank you, Paula.
So welcome, Bridget. Welcome, everybody. We're very glad to have you join us today.
Yes, welcome everyone. Good to be here.
So we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which we meet today and their continuing connection to the land, waters and communities of Australia and the lands from all around the world upon which you might be joining us. And we have people who join us from all sorts of places. We pay our respects to them and their elders past, present and emerging, and elders from Indigenous communities around the world and anyone who might be joining us today. So our topic for today, we are going to look at the theme or the idea of focusing on consistency, not perfection, to achieve results. And we're going to frame some really great coaching questions around this topic. As always, this is about creating community, creating shared learning experiences, having thought-provoking conversations. And at the end, for those of you who are joining, looking for your CCEs, we will have those available for you at the end and you can take a screenshot. Bridget and I would love to hear from everybody today, your thoughts around this. And as we go through any great coaching questions that you might have that we can share with everybody, because this really is about, I guess what we do is we take an idea or a theme and look at how do we apply this in coaching and what does this mean and when can you use it and what difference would it make? So everybody, please feel free to join us as we go through. So to start with, I always love going down a rabbit hole and looking for quotes or ideas or thoughts from other people. And I pulled out some quotes around the theme of consistency. This first one is from Angela Duckworth, who's the author of Grit, which I've seen a TED talk about this, and grit is one of my really favourite things to think about now, which is that idea that you just dig in and keep going, and and you just keep going until you get it done. And she says consistency of effort over the long run is everything. And I think this is a really great one because it's that idea that it's not just a once-off effort, it's that we are consistently, and I think that's the right word for this, is that it's that you have to keep doing more of it all of the time. And I was delivering a program a couple of weeks ago, and this idea of, and Bridget, I'm sure you've heard this, is, it takes time for coaching. Or I don't know where to start, or I don't know, I've done it once and I'm not sure what to do. And I think this is where it's that idea of if you keep practicing and you keep doing it, you're going to get there.
Absolutely. It's one of those things that I talk about, when I'm facilitating too, the Cert 4 or the diploma students, I'll always say something every day. When you get to day 5 of the program and they're going out then into the big wide world to practice their coaching skill, I say something every day. Be persistent and consistent with what you do to try it on, build it up, take something and work with it, and those small manageable steps consistently that become something, toward understanding. Look back and think, oh, look how far I've come. That's sort of those small manageable steps that are consistent.
Yeah, and I think that I really love persistent and consistent. I've taken that now, Bridget, now that you've said it to everybody. And I think Jim Rohn is agreeing with you as well, where he says discipline and consistency is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. I think it's exactly what you're saying, is that when you apply persistency or discipline, or making sure that you continue and you are consistent, it's the difference between that meeting the goals and the accomplishment that goes with it. And if we look at Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who says success isn't always about greatness, it's about consistency.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's that consistent hard work gains success, and greatness will come.
Exactly, exactly. So it's those small, manageable, consistent steps that you do along the way that produces that greatness. And it's not about taking this massive bite size, huge overwhelm. Oh, this is so huge. It's just that consistent effort every day. It's the small steps that make a difference, and the outcome could potentially be greatness. You've achieved what you wanted to achieve because you've been consistent.
I think too, it's about thinking of that word of success. How are we defining our success? Are we defining it by greatness, or are we defining it about the consistency? Are we defining it by the fact that we're attaining our goals?
Absolutely. I mean, they do say, it's the journey, not necessarily the destination. So the journey is really, really important, and what we can achieve through those daily consistent actions or thoughts or whatever it is that we're wanting to achieve. It's really deciding that it's evolving around who we become because of those consistent actions or thoughts, whatever it is that we're wanting to achieve.
Yeah, thank you, Bridget. So let's look at the other side, which is about perfectionism. And the first quote that I found was Brene Brown. So perfectionism is a 20-ton shield that we lug around thinking it will protect us, when in fact it's the thing that's really preventing us from taking flight.
Yes,
so I think it's that idea that until it's perfect, we don't do anything. But if you don't do anything, you'll never make it.
Exactly. It really is perfectionism. Perfectionism is that obstacle in the way, or the potential excuse that we might be giving ourselves, or the concern or fear maybe that we might have around taking that first step, thinking we need it to be perfect. So therefore, I'll wait for the right time or the right environment or the right thing to happen before I make a start, and then it'll be perfect. So it can be a real obstacle.
Yeah, and I was talking to someone this week around an organisational change, a restructure that's happening, and it hasn't actually been implemented because they're still talking about it. They're still focusing on making it perfect. And in the meantime, it's causing chaos behind the scenes because nobody knows what's going on. Everybody's really worried about it. They're all, what will happen to my role? What will happen to the organisation? So in the absence of an actual plan moving forward, what they have is this, the loss of productivity, the disengagement is all welling up behind the scenes.
Absolutely. And it's really then looking at what is the impact essentially of waiting for perfect, whatever that perfect is. So it can have significant impact.
Yeah, and I would say chances are it won't be perfect even when you roll it out, because you can't, particularly an organizational restructure, there's no way to genuinely take into account every individual in that restructure or what might happen, or that some of those impacts. So it's never actually going to be perfect.
Absolutely.
So we've also got Seth Godin, who said waiting for perfect is never as smart as making progress.
That's right. And I think Paul has added in a comment too. I think you just described my organisation. So yeah, absolutely.
And I think this idea too about perfectionism, and I reflected on this too, is that I often say to myself, you've just got to get the job done. So sometimes you've just got to get the job done, but it's about it being quality work at the same time. So it's not just get it done and, and it be terrible. I think it is about, there has to be a quality aspect to it, but quality isn't perfection.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. So it's being thoughtful and mindful about the consistent steps that you're taking, and that's how you get it done, is that consistency, but being thoughtful about how am I approaching this? What am I doing? What do I need to do? that's going to make sure that I'm that quality output that you're talking about, Paula.
And the last one here we had, the process of doing work that's going to be perfect is exhausting and can lead to creating nothing at all. And I think it's in that same idea that it's better to be doing something and moving that one step forward, a quality something, and doing that one step forward, than waiting and doing nothing at all. And it is exhausting, because in the meantime, whilst you're waiting for perfection, other things are going on in your life and being added in, and there's other tasks that are coming up. And so you're waiting for this perfect moment that just is not going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so we've looked at consistency and perfection, and so let's have a look at what this looks like from a coaching perspective and where this might be important. So for most of you, you will have seen the GROW model image that we have. And for those on the line, I'll quickly run through it for you. So we're looking at G is the goal. So what's the topic? What would you like to achieve? Reality is what's happening now. Options are what are your options to move forward? And then the way forward is what will you do and by when? And we talk about the wiggle words, which is the perhaps I'll do this, then maybe I'll do it, or I'll get around to that, is one of the wiggle words I hear myself say. So it's really the foundation of coaching is that GROW model. And then when we look at this adding in the consistency, it's around when you're looking at that commitment, what is the commitment that you're taking? And thinking about it it's that one step forward that leads you to the next goal and being consistent about that. And then thinking about it from an accountability perspective. So what am I now accountable for? What feedback do I need? And what are the results from taking that action?
Yeah. And I think it's important to know what you've just said there too, Paula, around the GROW model and how we use it. Watching out for that wiggle, the words that people use that potentially prevent them from making a start. And also when we're talking about options, that when we talk about GROW, we talk about what's one step that you can take. We're not asking, so how will you accomplish it? How will you achieve the outcome in that one massive leap? We talk about one step, which supports the idea of consistency and those chunking it down to manageable pieces so that you can actually take control of action, be mindful and thoughtful about what you're doing. And so, so getting really clear around watching out for the wiggle, overcoming that wiggle, and designing what step can we take, which supports that level of consistency, which happens outside of the coaching session. So that's where your getting the job done occurs, is once you've had that coaching conversation and then you go away and do the stuff, do the work, whatever it is that you want to do, but setting yourself up for your version of success and making sure that you're being consistent. And that can include accountability, of course, and feedback, and you'll end up with a result.
I think too, when you're thinking about this from a coaching perspective, in that goal space too, it's when you sit with someone and their goal is this big, hairy, massive goal. And we know that in that coaching session, we're not going to be able to solve that big, hairy, massive goal. And it's those questions that we ask people that allows us to focus on what do we want to focus on in this conversation?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And so we can think about that consistency perspective from there as well. What we're wanting is consistent conversations and consistent coaching that moves that person one step forward, rather than if you focus on that really big, hairy goal, you probably are going to be thinking about perfection. So how do I make it perfect to reach that goal, rather than what are the steps I need to take in order to reach that goal?
Yeah, absolutely. And what comes up for me as you say that too is I'm often saying, in fact, it's probably one of my mantras, is keep it simple. Keep it simple. And that ties into, from how I perceive or look at consistency, keeping it simple, consistency, step by step, chunk it down, do something often, do it well, but chunk it down and keep it simple so you get to where you want to go.
Yeah, and if you're a manager in an organization thinking about how do I consistently show up as a coach every day, this is about what are the great questions that you're going to ask today. It's not about going from zero to hero in 30 seconds, because none of us became the coaches that we are today by not practicing, because to me this is about that whole practicing, and it's about giving yourself permission to do. And you said it at the beginning, what's the one thing that you're going to do today that will lead you to your goal? So if becoming a great coaching leader is your focus, what's the one thing that you could do today? Which conversation are you going to utilize some of your coaching tools in today to get an impact? So it's looking at it from that perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. That's exactly the way to do it, and how to build up that toolkit and build that culture, and everything that you're wanting to achieve in the workplace is through that consistency.
Yeah. So, oops, there we go. So we've looked at it from consistency, not perfection. So consistency is steady, regular, constant practice and application to achieve results, which we actually just described then, Bridget, from our if you want to be a coaching leader. Perfection tends to focus on being faultless, flawless, 100% perfect and dreamlike. And if we think about this from a growth mindset perspective, which I love as well, is perfection suggests from those words that you can't make a mistake. But in actual fact, some of those mistakes that you make are the greatest gifts that you'll ever get, because you can learn from them and grow from them.
Absolutely. And I like the way that you have the dream-like place there in that perfection, because it draws me to thinking about people that can be really highly visual and love that whole vision piece. If I think about personality profiling, you're thinking, I love that big picture, what it looks like, feels like, sounds like, and sometimes can get stuck in that space, but wanting to drill it down and chunk it down to actually take some steps and some action. So it's really important for people who love the vision to draw it down as well, and create some logical or sort of consistent steps.
Yeah, and it's great from a team perspective if you can have those really big picture thinkers, and then you've got the other pragmatic action-based people, because they can take those bits of that dream and then talk about how do we turn this into reality, and then you've got steps to move forward. So yeah, I really like that idea, and that working in a great team environment that allows you to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so we need consistency to pursue perfection. Perfection is not the end state if we are continuously improving. And it's that idea that it's a journey and there is no destination, because perfection sounds like there is a destination, like you get there and then it's perfect. Whereas we know along the way that it is all about that journey, and it's about, I think too, it's about what happens on that journey as you're getting there. What else do you learn? What did you not know that you were going to find out, that if you were just seeking that perfection, you might not reach as well?
Exactly. And how does that impact the end state as well? What, as you say, what information do I now have? How does it impact the end state? Does it change, or what does it look like now that we have this extra information? It's really a really important process, consistency.
So there are some upsides to the pursuit of perfection. So for some people, it's a driving focus. There's motivation, you strive for excellence, continuous improvement, and it can create tension. And for some people, that tension works quite well for them, because it's that finding that balance. And I think in that pursuit of perfection, what's really important is making sure that it does not stop you from taking that step forward. So it's not about saying perfectionism is the worst thing in the world, but it is about saying, if that is something that's important to someone, how do we help them to make choices that will allow them to continue to move forward.
Mm.
And then on the other side, the downside is that people can be never happy or satisfied. They create too much pressure. That idea of perfectionism creates too much pressure. There's a risk of achievement, then the stop. So rather than continuous improvement, it's you risk actually getting there because you stop because it's not going to be perfect. Or that you don't achieve it and you beat yourself up, you give up, and you feel like a failure. So there's the two sides to it, and for a coach, it's about recognizing if someone is looking at that perfection state, and helping them by asking some really great questions to look at what are the upsides and the downsides.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that idea. Absolutely. So taking perfection and making it work for you if it's something that's important in terms of, well, what will work for me, and what do I need to be aware of and mindful of.
And we've put up here a link for everybody too that is from it's a TED talk, and it's talking about teaching girls bravery, not perfection. And for anyone, I recommend that you go and if you can't see the link but you can hear us talking, then do a Google search on Teach Girls Bravery, Not Perfection, and you'll find the TED talk. And it is this idea about creating a space for our girls to be brave, to take a step that they might not have thought that they could do, to try something that they've never tried, rather than trying to be the perfect girl. I watched the movie My Fair Lady recently, and in My Fair Lady, Eliza Doolittle says, "But I'm a good girl. I'm a good," like she says it a lot, and it really resonated with me. That said, it's this idea that she has to be a good girl. Why does she have to be a good girl? What happens if you're not a good girl? And for our current girls coming through, and for us in our later years as well, how about we focus on this idea about bravery rather than perfection?
Love that.
Okay, so let's have a look at some really great quality coaching questions. And this is where I'm going to open this up to our alumni as well. We're looking for what are some really great coaching questions that you can ask around this idea about consistency rather than perfection. And we've put a few up there just to get us all started. So the questions we've got are, where do you need to be consistent? Or where could you be consistent? How can you be consistent? And what would be the benefits of being consistent? So these are just some that we've put up there to begin with. Bridget, what other great questions have you got?
Yeah, well, I love the idea of when we're thinking about those simple coaching questions that we can ask is to really think about, and I've talked about this many a time, the who, what, where, when, and how. So if you take the word consistent and you're applying those open question starters, you can think about who can support my consistency, or what resources and tools do I need to support me being consistent? Or perhaps it might be, what can I do to be more consistent? Who do I need to be to demonstrate consistency? Or perhaps it's something like, where do I need to focus my attention to start my consistency? Maybe it's something like, when will I start being consistent? What does it look like? What's the time frame? When will I do it? Literally, when will I do it in terms of that consistent process of what I'm wanting to achieve? And what does consistency look like to me? What does it feel like, consistency? How do I know that I'm being consistent? Nicole adds, what is the impact when you are consistent? It's a great question. I think impact is really important when it thinks about, well, what will this mean for me? What will it mean for my environment, my team, the organisation. What will it mean, this consistency? What will it look like as we progress? It's such an exciting concept when we're able to reframe the word consistency and create all these really exciting questions to build that motivation and that inspiration to do something that we're wanting to achieve. And when we're able to do that by asking these really great questions, we're able to become so motivated that we can't help but be consistent. I think that's what I'm trying to say. And the questions, the quality coaching questions, really support that level of motivation, to feel inspired, and to support you being consistent every day with something every day.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't know if anyone else was writing all those questions down, but I was putting them in my memory bank, all of them. I was also thinking about that idea of perfectionism and how we might tackle perfectionism in a coaching conversation. And the thought that I had that popped into my mind was around how is the perfectionism holding you back, or what might be the impacts of your perfectionism.
Yes.
And I know it's sort of starting on the other side, and then we move into the what would consistency mean to you. But I think sometimes pulling it back and going, what is this? What's the impact to you if you're focusing in this area?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to always, look forward and what are we inspiring to move toward, but also what's holding us back, and looking at those obstacles or barriers in the way. And if it is perfectionism, then what great questions can we ask around perfectionism that's going to help explode the idea, rip apart the belief system around it has to be perfect. And sort of kick those legs out from under the tabletop and say, okay, so if that's what perfect has meant for me in the past, what does it now mean for me? How can I make this work for me so that, the good parts of perfectionism can support me, but I can let go of those parts, the downsides that do not support me, and reframe it into something else that's going to help me to actually build that consistency up.
Yeah, and just as you're saying that, I'm thinking this would be great activity to do with your team as well. So if you're working with a team, thinking about, what approach would we like to take? So what's the approach for this team, or how do we create consistency within our team? What does that consistency look like? How do we know we're successful when we're consistent? So bringing it out into the open and talking about what does this consistency mean? And as a team, how do we show up and be consistent?
Absolutely. They're all really valuable questions that really support the idea of consistency and supporting people in making a difference through that daily consistency, something every day.
Great. I don't know, Bridget. I honestly, I just write down all of your questions and add them to my toolkit. So because there's always such great thoughts in there, and that allow you to really help someone in this space to grow and develop. So thank you so very much for all your great questions today.
Pleasure. Pleasure.
All right. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. So as always, we're looking forward to 2025 course dates now, because our last programs are about to run. So our certificate for in workplace and business coaching, we have a February and a May program next year. We'll be running our diploma of organisational coaching, which we've just run a program which was highly successful. We also do executive and senior leader coaching. We do have a mentor coaching program. So if you're looking at your ICF accreditation and thinking how am I traveling and do I need some mentor coaching, we can help you with that, as well as the mediation services. So thank you, everybody, for coming along today. I have really enjoyed our conversation, Bridget, and I'm feeling like I need to be a bit more consistent with some things. I will consistently work on that. And we look forward to seeing you all next week. We're running the coaching cafes all the way through to the end of November. So as always, go and have a lovely weekend, and we will see you soon. And anyone who's looking for their CCEs, we are going to have them put them up in just one moment.